Hello, and thank you for joining us here on the Neutral Zone. I am Phil Milani, joined as always by my trusty sidekick, my partner in crime. Really, the best way to describe this person is my everything. It's at Eric Dalala.
Phil, we're here together.
This is a very special episode of the Neutral Zone because we are back in studio.
I never thought this day would come.
We're back together, Eric. In person.
I know. People have been asking for it. They've been clamoring for it. It's finally happened.
Yes. Back in person. It feels good. It feels more. This is the way it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, we're supposed to yell at each other face to face.
Yeah. And plus the audio quality, a little bit easier to listen to.
I'll still tap on the microphone occasionally just for you.
Old time's sake.
Right.
The other reason why this is a special episode of the Neutral Zone is because we are beginning our Countdown to Camp series.
Phil, training camp is going to be here before we know it.
Yeah. For the next 5 weeks, we are going to take one position. We're going to argue about it for about 15 to 20 minutes. That's the idea anyway, Eric. We go long sometimes, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can certainly get there.
Yeah. Now people are starting to commute to work again. A lot of people are out back. The traffic is what it used to be like. So we try to keep these maybe to one commute's length.
It could be nice.
That's the goal, at least.
Yeah.
That's called podcasting in the business, Eric.
You're the expert.
Yeah. So for the next 5 weeks, we are going to be doing Countdown to Camp. We're going to pick a topic and then discuss it. Today's episode, all about, on paper, is this Broncos team the best team since the Super Bowl team in 2015? So we're going to dive all into that. A lot of different areas we can examine here, Eric, and let's just dive in. Do you think that this is the best team on paper since 2015?
I think it's got some heavy competition from that 2016 team that, of course, was essentially still the core of the Super Bowl winning team. Obviously, you lost a few players. Danny Trevathan moves on. Malik Jackson moves on. So I think maybe the quarterback decided to do something else. Peyton Manning, of course, retired. But the core of that team, the structure, the bones, they were all the same. And that was a good team, won 9 games, were very close to making the playoffs, probably without a couple key injuries at times. They probably do make the playoffs, and I think they could have won a game or two. They beat some good teams that year, but and maybe we look closer at that team in particular, but I think it's not a stretch to say that when you look at the 2017, the 2018, 2019, and 2020 versions of the Broncos, this roster stacks up very favorably.
Yeah, I think this is the most optimism in Broncos country since maybe 2016, I would say. I think that on paper, there's not a lot of holes on this year's team. Obviously, everything always comes down to the quarterback position, which is how it always is for every team out there. But just the roster as a whole, when you look around, it's pretty solid. And in my mind, it's better than that 2016 team.
Okay.
I think so. So let's break this down here, Eric. Obviously, we could start at quarterback position with your favorite quarterback of all time, Trevor Simeon.
Trevor was a Pro Bowl alternate that year, was invited to the Pro Bowl, could have been a Pro Bowler if he wasn't hurt.
I think like 7 other quarterbacks got injured, and that's how he got in.
Those are details. I don't know if those are necessarily important, but Trevor played winning football especially in the beginning of the season. People forget that Broncos team, I believe they were 6-2, 6-3. They started that year really well, and things kind of went south when Trevor Simeon suffered an injury, kind of dealt with a shoulder late in the year. And that, Phil, too, is when the Chiefs were kind of starting their ascension to where they are now. Obviously, Alex Smith was still the quarterback at that time. But, I mean, it's not that Teddy Bridgewater or Drew Lock cannot be better than Trevor Simeon, but I think maybe people underestimate what Trevor did that year.
Yeah, but just – he started that season well, was surrounded by a lot of talent, and sort of, I think back to that Cincinnati game, he threw 4 touchdown passes.
No interceptions. 300 yards.
Famous victory speech there. But I would say that the combination of either Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater, one of those two, I think are better than Trevor Simeon. I give the nod to this year's quarterback team.
No, I think that's what you hope for, and I think in all likelihood, because you have a competition where these guys can push each other, whoever ends up there should be able to have a better stat line than Trevor did that year. To remind people, 18 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 3,400 yards, but he did complete fewer than 60% of his passes. So hopefully you get a little bit better play from the quarterback position.
Yeah, I'm going to give the nod to Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater at that position. And let's just go down the position by position here, Eric. C.J. Anderson, the starting running back that year in 2016. I think that Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, that combination is better than what they had in 2016.
Yeah, and I'll agree with you there. I think that obviously Devontae Booker came in that year as a rookie, contributed a little bit. But I think Melvin Gordon's Pro Bowl potential, we've seen what he can be. He's an explosive running back when he's at his best. Javonte Williams looks really good. And I think the depth there with Mike Boone, that's kind of an easy check mark in this 2021 on the side of this team.
Yeah, exactly. And then this might be surprising because you think, okay, this 2021 team, wide receivers are really strong, but I would actually give the nod to Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. At least that year, both of those guys were Pro Bowlers. I think it would be a tremendous season if both Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy turn out to be Pro Bowlers. But for the sake of this argument, I'll give that to 2016.
Yeah, I mean, you had two Pro Bowl players there, more than 1,000 yards. You hope that Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton can be the equivalent of Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas, but you just have to see it first. I don't know that we've seen enough, especially with Cortland coming off an injury. Emmanuel and Demaryius played really well that year. They definitely have the edge there. And let's not forget, Benny Fowler was a pretty good, I thought, third option there. A couple other guys as well. But, yeah, I'm not sure that as good as Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy can be, maybe they haven't proven it quite yet.
Yeah, maybe just like a higher top-end talent that specific year for the wide receiver room. Maybe if you want to compare the entire wide receiver room to that year's room, maybe you'd give the nod to this year's Broncos just because the way Tim Patrick came on, KJ Hamler. I think that that year's team, like you mentioned, Benny Fowler, maybe just not quite the same amount of depth that year.
Yeah, behind those three guys.
Cody Latimer.
Yeah, kind of dropped off. Jordan Taylor. It just kind of dropped off a little bit.
Raymond was on that team.
Good guy.
He had some success in Tennessee, right? Yeah. But maybe just in terms of starters,
right?
2016 a little bit better. Tight end, Virgil Green compared to Noah Fant. I think you go Noah there.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's Virgil was a very good blocking tight end, but made an impact at times. But Noah is the more dynamic, explosive player. And then you talk about if Albert O's healthy, he's a guy that you can challenge people in two tight end sets. You couldn't do that in 2016 in the same way. So, yeah, I think tight end is a clear win for 2021.
And then the O-line as a whole, that year you had Okun, Max Garcia, Matt Paradis, Michael Schofield. That's what Donald Stevenson was the right tackle that year. Compared to this year's team, I think I like this, especially if Garrett Bowles can pick up where he left off. Dalton Reisner, Lloyd Cushenberry. I think that, Graham Glasgow, if they can figure out that right tackle position, maybe a Bobby Massey, I like this year's line. I think that's one of the bright spots for this year's offense.
Yeah, I think along the line there are, I think Matt Paradis as a center is probably a guy you would pick over Lloyd Cushenberry just because Matt, he was really impressive, I thought. Kind of similar to Lloyd in that he played all those snaps. Garrett Bowles, obviously a left tackle, I think is a better option there. Right tackle has just been a thorn in this team's side for years, really since 2015. So it's kind of a wash there. But, yeah, I think the play of Graham Glasgow and Dalton Reisner and Garrett Bowles maybe pushes it over. And you just think the way they work as a unit, and plus you now have Mike Munchak as your offensive line coach, that to me, I think it speaks favorably for the 2021 side.
So offensively speaking, only wide receiver from 2016 wins there. So you would expect this year's offense to be at least better than that 2016 team. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball here, Eric. D-line, that's kind of interesting if you ask me. Derek Wolfe, Sylvester Williams, and Jared Crick were the starters that year compared to Shelby Harris, Draymond Jones, and Mike Purcell.
Yeah.
Maybe a toss-up, would you say? I don't know.
Yeah, pretty close, I think. Derek Wolfe, obviously a really good player here in Denver, worked so well with Von Miller that he might be kind of the best individual player of any of those D linemen. But Draymond Jones has a lot of potential. Mike Purcell, we know what he can do as a run stopper. And so maybe a slight edge to the group in terms of the 2021 team. But like you said, very close. I don't think it leans strongly one way or another.
Yeah, let's just call that a toss-up, I think. And then if you move outside the edge rushers, this is really interesting to me. You've got a combination of Shane Ray and DeMarcus Ware. Let's compare that just head-to-head with Bradley Chubb. I think that Bradley Chubb could be in position here to be in the mix for Defensive Player of the Year if he stays healthy, coming off a Pro Bowl season. Hopefully he's fully healthy after a minor procedure just to clean things up this offseason. I'm expecting big things from Bradley Chubb this year.
Yeah, and again, I think some of this is projection, right? Like the Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton combination. We know what we got from DeMarcus, and at times it was okay, but he was hurt a lot that year and couldn't stay on the field. Shane Ray, that was probably, you could argue, his best season, I think. He took a little bit of a step. 2017, you thought he was going to take a big step, and of course it doesn't happen. But the thing there is that with Vaughn in 2016, you're getting a really good pass rusher. I think a first-team All-Pro that year, if I'm not mistaken. And so the guarantee of having that Von Miller over a Von Miller that I think can be really good in 2021 but has to come back off an injury, I think I lean toward the 2016 group just because you have at least one elite guy, whereas this year both Bradley and Vaughn are kind of coming back from some things.
Yeah, some question marks around this year's pass rushers. Although if you talk to them, Von Miller says that he's expecting to pick up right where he left off. Feels like he's in really good shape. Bradley Chubb, you're hoping that he's picking up where he left off from last season coming off that Pro Bowl. But yeah, 2016, Vaughn had 13.5 sacks. I think that you probably have to give the edge there to the edge rushers of 2016.
And Shane Ray had 8 sacks that season. I think DeMarcus Ware had like 4 or 5. And so you're talking about in the 25 sack category. And, Shaq Barrett had a few. So to me, that's an edge to the 2016 team.
Yeah, I agree there. But we're doing this just on paper,
Right.
But I will say I do think it's possible for Von Miller and Bradley Chubb each to have really good years. So,
yes.
So while on paper the edge goes to 2016, it's possible that this year's edge rushers could really get after the quarterback. How about inside linebacker, Eric? 2016, Brandon Marshall and Todd Davis. This year, Alexander Johnson and Josie Jewell.
Yeah, I think that's pretty close to a toss-up as well. Both of those groups probably really good run defending units, not so great in pass coverage at times. I mean, for me, the lingering moment or lasting memory of 2016 is that Atlanta Falcons game when Tevin Coleman had so much success against the linebacking core. And so hard to say one way or another that one of those groups was spectacular, but I would say that's a wash.
Yeah, I think so too. And, I'm hoping that Alexander Johnson, plays up to his new deal here for at least this season. And Josie Jewell seems like he's ready to, be that established starter where, he feels really confident when he's out there, that kind of a player. So I would say that that's about a wash.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. Moving on to cornerbacks. Okay, Aqib Talib and Chris Harris Jr. in 2016. Could be close with some combination of Kyle Fuller, Ronald Darby, and Pat Surtain.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. And, of course, you got Bradley Roby that year in 2016, too, who, quite frankly, won a couple of games for the Broncos. The potential is really good this year, but you can't give it to him right now. I mean, they proved it. They were first-team All-Pros. Maybe the best cornerback group in team history. Like that. From that group of guys together, just really impressive.
Yeah, most of them. I mean, Aqib Talib, all those pick sixes, Chris Harris Jr. was so solid there, Bradley Roby. I think that it's similar to the edge rusher where those guys have proven it in 2016. this unit still needs, we got to figure out how it's going to come together, how they're going to play, how they're going to feed off of each other. So even if this year's group fulfills their potential, that would just match what those guys were able to do in 2016. So definitely the nod there. And then how about at safety, Eric?
Yeah, I actually like the 2021 group just because I think that Justin Simmons is probably the best safety out of those four guys, which would be him, Kareem Jackson, Darian Stewart, and TJ Ward. I think Justin is at the top of that list, has a chance to be one of the greatest safeties here in team history. And I think that combo of Kareem and Justin works really well. I think, if you put them with the corners from 2016, that'd be a really special group. But I will give, if there's one area on this defense where you give an edge to this year's team, it's a safety position.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Justin Simmons could be the best safety in football next season, and I think that Kareem Jackson really feeds off of him well. They're a great duo there, so I give the nod to this year's team. So that means 2 for 2016 on defense, edge rusher and cornerback, and then for this year's team, just the safety position, and then a couple of pushes there. So we're still pretty close here. Now, how about as specialists? Where do you feel like what side do you prefer here? Obviously, Brandon McManus on both teams.
Yeah, Brandon McManus. He actually probably the best season of his career really was last year if you're looking at it percentage wise. So he's probably improved a little bit. Punter's probably better on this year's team just because Riley Dixon didn't have a great rookie year. Don't know that I can speak to the intricacies of Jacob Bobenmoyer versus Casey Kreider. But I do think return-wise, Deontay Spencer is as dynamic a threat as they've had in a long time, probably since Trindon Holiday. So they probably get the edge there for this year's group.
I think so, too. So I think that we're both on the same page here saying that this year's team better on paper than 2016.
Again, for me, it all comes down to the quarterback. And like any conversation we have, if Drew or Teddy can play at a level that's above Trevor Simeon, for example, which I think is as close to replacement level quarterback play as the Broncos have had since Peyton retired, then yeah, this team should be better than 2016 on paper and on the field. But if they don't play up to their potential or play well, you can waste the rest of it. Yeah,
I agree. I think it's fair to say that this is the best team on paper since the Broncos won that Super Bowl. Eric, you know what's always interesting about that 2016 team is you can't help but wonder, what if? That team didn't lose a lot of talent from the team that won Super Bowl 50. If Peyton Manning returns for that season, how far do you think that 2016 team would have gone?
I don't think there were any true great teams in the league that year either. Obviously New England goes on to the Super Bowl. I think you're right back in that AFC championship mix, and it probably just depends on, is it in Denver, is it in New England? But part of that is too, could Peyton have managed another season physically? And if he could have, I think he would have. And so, he went out on top, and they did have a chance the next year. But Phil, the kind of the years since, when the talent was depleted, I think what makes this year's team better than those is just the depth is better. There's been some years here where the starters are really talented at certain areas, and maybe better than this year's team, but the depth across the roster is really good now.
Yeah, of course, the Broncos, 4 consecutive losing seasons here, have not had a winning season since 2016. So, the hard thing for Broncos fans is following Super Bowl wins, the quarterback's retired. And so they've never really had a chance to see, things fizzle out. It's always been right off the cliff a little bit here. Sometimes I wonder, gosh, if Peyton would have stayed healthy in 2016, I think that they would have been right back in the mix. I think they're playing New England again, and just you're seeing who's going.
Yeah.
A part of it is that Peyton set such a tone in the building, too. It's not just his level of quarterback play, but we've got Peyton Manning at quarterback. Everybody believes, everybody's buying in, everybody feels like they got to raise their level of play. Haven't seen that type of, I don't know if you call that just leadership, but there's just certain mystique about Peyton that everybody was just on edge a little bit more. I think that you need something like that where, okay, maybe if like Drew Lock has a really good year, then he kind of has that cachet, but impossible to replace that kind of feel around the building.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
So we'll see what Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater can do this year, but it does sound like this team on paper really has the potential to, if you get good quarterback play, they could be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest if in the NFL for any team, but if they can take a step forward, this team should be in the hunt for a wild card, and they should be able to challenge the Chiefs for the division. And really, Phil, it's been a long time since the division title has been up for grabs, and you just hope that you get consistent enough quarterback play. That, to me, is the biggest thing. It's not – I don't expect either one of these guys to be Patrick Mahomes. You need consistent quarterback play, and if you can do that, you're going to be in the mix.
Yeah, if you can just not lose a game, if you can keep them in the mix, maybe a couple you win, but if you don't lose the game, the Broncos should be in the fourth quarter, should be somewhat close in a lot of these games because that's just how good this defense should be.
Right.
So, well, we're just beginning our countdown to camp series here. We'll be back next week with a look at Von Miller's season. What would be a good season for Von Miller? Then we'll dive in the week after that. We'll talk a little bit about Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. We'll, of course, talk about the quarterback battle a little bit later. And then the final week before training camp gets started, we'll have some season predictions, Eric. How does that sound?
I love predictions.
This feels weird to me because we're not going through the YouTube comments. We're not playing voicemails. You think that NZ Nation will be okay with this?
I hope so. Just bear with us for now. We'll be back to the traditional shows soon enough.
Yeah. Because we like to have fun.
Yeah.
This series might be for some of those traditionalists who've commented and said, not enough football talk.
Right.
Well, here you go. This should make you happy here.
It should make you very happy.
Really good audio quality, great cameras. The YouTube audience should be happy here, and it's just nonstop football.
I don't want to hear another complaint.
Yeah, no more complaining. All right, we'll be back next week with a look at what would be a good season for Von Miller. Until then, for Eric Dalala, I'm Phil Milani. You've been listening to
The Neutral Zone.